Thank you, Jen. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Zoomers, for showing up. Yeah, I'd like to begin with a chant, and I'll need to share my screen here, which some of you may already know. Um, Maybe it's one of the most chanted chants in Buddhism, but one of the oldest chants as well. So what we'll start with is this Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. So this means homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. So that being the Buddha, but the Buddha really is representative of our own awareness, our own uh, wakefulness, and so we pay homage. And so when you see somebody bowing to the Buddha, they're not bowing to a deity that's outside of themselves. They're bowing to their own inherent wakefulness, their own awakened nature. And then we do something that's very traditional in Buddhism is we take refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And just explain the Buddha. The Dhamma is the teaching of the Buddha, or really the oldest definition of Dhamma is nature, the natural law, the way things are. And so it's this acknowledgement of natural law. When the Buddha taught the Dhamma, he said that he didn't create it; he discovered it. It was something that's inherent and natural in the universal system. And so he discovered how the mind works, in a sense. And so that's what we practice. And then the third thing we take refuge in is the Sangha, which is the community of practitioners, us practicing for more awareness, more compassion, more heart, more humanity. So I'm just going to chant it. I wanted to put the words up there so you could see them. I'm not going to do call and response, but if you know this, please feel free to join in. And again, it's that's his. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah, there we go. Is maybe I can even get it even bigger. Ah, yeah. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So chant the Namo Tassa 3 times, and then go through the Buddha Dhamma Sangha 1, 2, and 3 times. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Udang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddham Saranang Gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami. Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. Tatiyampi dhammang saranam gacchami. Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami. Allow this bell and the gradual stilling of vibration to lead us into a natural stillness, meditation, silence. And so you might move a little bit, find your seat, take a few nice long breaths. Ah, hmm. And just allow the attention to just begin to move from head down through the body. One thing I noticed when I first started meditating was how much energy was in the head. Everything was about thinking, narrating, dictating. Real wisdom comes from this body, the experience of presence right here and right now. Because thinking exists in time, embodiment exists in presence. And in presence is where awakening happens. And so we draw our attention down through the body, out of the head. And as your awareness moves through the body, you might notice some places of tension and holding that you can just naturally allow to soften. Come into the body, and as Ajahn Mun said, we discover this cave of wonders. Really like that. Cave of wonders. Breath is happening without me having to do it. Thousands of complex processes are happening in this body that I have very little agency over, but without which I wouldn't be having this experience here. This incredible opportunity to be conscious and present, feel. Thinking may be there, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be centralized or emphasized. I'm not trying to stop thinking. It's orienting towards a much more complete experience where thinking is just one aspect of it. So don't try to stop thinking. It just creates a lot of stress. What is it like to be in this body right here, right now, completely? Not thinking about the body or conceptualizing the experience, but what's the actual lived experience of breathing, feeling, of embodiment. Feel a contraction or and to follow a thought stream or start planning. It can be nice to just take a nice long, slow inhale and just let the exhale go. Uh, Find joy in becoming present. Checking in again, noticing where the energy is. Grounding back down. Experiencing the body. back here to the immediacy of this moment, connection with the earth, breath, the room, the Sangha. Even if your Sangha shows up as a bunch of rectangles on a computer screen, there's still a felt presence there. So feeling this collective connection around a similar intention of care. Ringing the bell. All right. Thank you all. So we'll take a little break now. We'll come back at by a quarter till. So uh, yeah, we'll keep this room quiet. So for those of you who want to stay in meditation or in silence, and then if you want to talk, you can go outside in the lobby, the library, or the tea room, and enjoy one another's company. All right. See you in a bit. Sorry. Okay. How's it sound? Is it okay? Good. All right. Great. Online? Good. Cool. All right. So tonight I'd like to reflect on Sangha, which is the Sanskrit or Pali word for community. And here, as we, as a mountain stream Sangha, it's not just a community. Um, we don't just gather together. It's much more meaningful in the scope of the Buddha's teaching. And so I'd like to talk about, at least begin the talk by talking about the Sangha as the third jewel of refuge. So I chanted the refuges at the beginning, um, and the Buddha laid out three: the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And in most of our centers and retreat centers, there's a lot of Buddha and a lot of Dharma, but sometimes there's not a lot of Sangha. Especially if you go to a silent retreat, you go and you practice. There's a lot of Buddha, a lot of Dharma, and then you leave, and there's not much Sangha. Uh, and so, why did the Buddha emphasize this as one of the three things to take refuge in? It's a pretty big deal. There's three refuges. A third of them is Sangha. And so we take refuge in the Buddha, we take refuge in the Dharma or the Dhamma, and we take refuge in the Sangha. And in our Buddhist circles, we repeat these refuges often. I chant them every morning and usually more than that throughout the day. And our familiarity with these things can sometimes soften their impact, which happens. It happens. Just like this breath we breathe and this body we're in, the miraculous nature of these things can lose their impact through familiarity. But the Buddha constantly emphasized Sangha alongside awakening itself, our project of waking up, that these teachings are all about. And he also put it alongside truth itself, Sangha. And this was very, very intentional, I think. And so, again, the Buddha represents awakening realized in this human life. That's what the Buddha represents. The Dharma represents truth discovered, the nature of suffering, and the possibility of freedom from suffering. And the Sangha represents something that's just as essential. Sangha is where awakening and truth become lived experience. It's how we do the Dharma, yeah, in the world. Without awakening or without Sangha, awakening just becomes history. It just becomes something lost in time. And without Sangha, the Dharma risks becoming something we admire rather than something that we practice. Yeah, it becomes this philosophy or some religion, one of many religions in the world, kind of becomes this abstract thing. And so Sangha is really the activity of the Dharma, where we experience that activity. Could say that Sangha is the living environment of liberation. At least that's the original intention. The Buddha was very clear about community. I mean, he lived in community. He created community. People came into the community. The community traveled together. They awoke together. They lived together. And so I think it's really helpful to go back and return to the early Buddhist communities that are described in the suttas, the Pali texts. And these monks and nuns wandering from village to village, living this the homeless life is what they would call it. And something I find really interesting is, the monks and the nuns, they renounce everything basically and take refuge in these three jewels. And from a perspective that's very conventional, it seems like that would be a pretty miserable life. Um, uh, During the snowstorm, I lost power and internet and all of these things, these comforts, and it was uh, difficult at times. And I was almost ashamed of myself at the comfort that I'm used to, and just these small things taken away. Um, but imagine just devoting your whole life to living free of all of these comforts, um, having to rely on others for food, for shelter, devoting yourself completely to the spiritual life with complete trust in the unfolding of the Dharma. It's kind of difficult to imagine sometimes. And so these early monks and nuns were completely supported by the lay practitioners, by the villagers around them. And so these what we call householders, practicing generosity while raising their family and doing their work, living their ordinary lives. They supported this early community, and still to this day, in many countries in Southeast Asia, this is still how the monasteries operate. So the Buddha didn't create followers gathered around a personality. This is really important. Many of our spiritual communities that we see, they're kind of gathered around a specific teacher or around a specific leader. What he was attempting to create was a practice culture, a culture that was devoted to practice, not to a particular teacher. This shared training in how to live wisely together, how to live skillfully together. So the people gathered around the Buddha or in these communities, not because they were alike or they were friends, but because they were committed to understanding suffering and ending suffering. That was the whole motivation. And I find it really interesting that the Buddha's followers in that time, again thinking about all the renunciation, like living this life of homelessness, they were called the happy ones. You think it would be really, really miserable um, from a conventional standpoint, but they were known as the happy, the joyful ones, because they were always uplifting and uplifted. And so within this practice culture, the practice shaped speech, how people talk to one another. Practice shaped livelihood, how people made their money in the lay community. Um, Practice shaped relationship, how people were with one another, with themselves, with all living beings. And so the Sangha is like this laboratory for awakening. And the way the Sangha was organized, and you still see this, you have the practitioners, and then the lay community. The lay community supports the monks and the nuns, the monastics, and the monastics support the community through spiritual teaching, through ceremony, through all these various ways. And so there's this very reciprocal relationship. And the Buddha was very intentional about this. I'll talk about that a little bit more later. There's this really beautiful moment in the, speaking of relationship, in the suttas, when Ananda, who was the Buddha's attendant, um, he comes to the Buddha and says, uh, spiritual friendship, kalyana mitta is the word here. Spiritual friendship is half the holy life. And the Buddha replies, do not say that, Ananda. Spiritual friendship is the whole of the holy life. It's uh, pretty interesting, right? When we think of monks and nuns as these kind of solitary practitioners, but really the early Sangha was all about relationship. They might go off and do retreats and do solitary practice, but the main practice was done in relationship with an entire community, this whole. So our practice, liberation, it matures in relationship with one another. Because relationship reveals what solitary practice cannot. Yeah. When we're alone, the mind can be calm and clear. We've all experienced this, right? Where it's much easier to be on your own and do your own thing, and then you add somebody else to that mix, and it becomes a lot more difficult. But together, when we come into relationship, deeper habits begin to emerge, things that aren't seen when we're by ourselves. Attachment to views, impatience, longing to be understood, fear of being misunderstood. All of these things begin to come up within this relating to one another. Sangha relationship becomes this mirror. Yeah. And we could call it a compassionate mirror, because it's mirroring back at us exactly what we need to see, exactly what we need to see, any relationship that we have. And so through one another, we begin to see the movements of clinging and the possibility of release. Yeah. And then through this relationship, through Sangha, practice becomes less about perfecting ourselves, or again, like this enlightenment project, and more about learning how to live without hardening the heart, living with a more open, vulnerable heart, courageous heart. And so I like this idea of a practice community, a community that's centered around practice. And when we're in a practicing community or a practicing Sangha, it's not defined by agreement. This is something that um, is often misunderstood. It's defined by a shared commitment to truth. Because as these things are seen within one another, it's not always very peaceful. I love Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, you know, I forget where I read this, but he was describing um, in the kitchen, the dishwasher. One of the things they have to do is wash the chopsticks, and he talks about, if you take each chopstick and wipe it off, that it becomes really difficult, and it takes a very, very long time. So the best way to clean the chopsticks is you put them all in one tub, fill it with water and soap, and you shake it. You shake it and 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 shake it. And gradually, by running into each other and banging up against the side and into one another, all they gradually get cleaned. And that's how he would describe Sangha. This is when the truth really comes out. And when I say Sangha, I'm talking about us, but also just relationship in general. Like when we're out in the world, and the practice doesn't leave once we leave here or leave our home. It's like this, if only I could just practice by myself, that's where the real practice is. That very urge is showing you exactly the clinging that you have to your own practice, your own way of doing things. This bias toward individuality. So this truth that we're looking at in the Buddhist sense means clearly impermanence, reactivity, suffering, and freedom. And in this practice community, honesty becomes a very sacred thing. It's the greatest gift we can give to one another is honesty. We, but with that honesty, we learn to speak carefully. We learn to listen deeply. We learn how to remain present if and when discomfort arises. And this takes a lot of courage to not be in reactivity or defensiveness or these various things. We have to be open to Sangha as a practice community that is serving my own awakening by uncovering these things that are maybe not so comfortable. Because practicing together means allowing ourselves to be known. Yeah, there's no hiding in a real Sangha. And in the early Sangha, the Buddhist Sangha, it's never described that I've seen as being flawless. Conflict arose. There's conflict all through the early community. And one of the central dangers of a community is thinking that harmony and peace is like this great thing. It's this goal. And it's not. Again, this attempt to make things always harmonious and peaceful can be actually incredibly dangerous to communities, and even a subtle form of violence. Because if peace and harmony are the only goal, the truth is being suppressed somewhere. If you're not feeling uncomfortable in community, then the truth isn't coming out. Yeah. So this discomfort in community, shows us where we cling. And that's really important in this practice. When we're sitting on our cushion and, if every sit that we have is just peaceful and harmonious, then we're going nowhere. we want it to be that way, but yeah, whenever I hear people come back from a retreat or after a sit, like, oh, it was a really peaceful, harmonious retreat. I'm like, uh-oh. It's like if you sit through that sit when it's really difficult, or you go to a retreat where it's really hard, that's the growth. Like biasing towards peace and harmony is its own kind of um, spiritual bypassing. And so, as I said in the early Sangha, misunderstandings happened, personalities differed, various people tried to kill the Buddha or tried to hurt him or do various things. Um, but what made it noble was this willingness to continue practicing within this relationship. That's what made it noble. That's what the Four Noble Truths are all about. It's not about who you are, it's about how you practice, how you choose to live your life. And so practice always stayed at the very center of everything. As I mentioned earlier, one of the most beautiful aspects of the Buddha's design for the community was what we might call this structural interdependence. Monastics depended on lay people for these four requisites that are always pointed out in the Vinaya: the food, shelter, clothing, and medicine. Um, and each day, the early Sangha went on what's called Pindipata, which is the alms round. And this still happens in Southeast Asia, in the Theravada communities, and also in the West when some of those communities have come to the West and had monasteries. They'll go out on alms rounds in these towns that have no idea what's going on. It's kind of funny. There's this actually Kittasaro was one of my teacher. Um, he came when he was in Thailand under Ajahn Chah, and then he was asked to come to go to England to establish a monastery in England. And they found this manor. They took over this manor that was really beat up, and they came over and spent a lot of time fixing it up. And it was this manor in this very very small kind of uppity English town. And there's this documentary you can watch on YouTube called "When the Buddha Came to Sussex." And it's actually really entertaining to see this kind of clash of cultures. You know, these Thai monks coming over. I think there's probably about 15 of them in robes and uh, against the backdrop of this like quintessential Southern England small little village town, and just seeing the conversation that was going on between these very traditional people and also these very traditional monks. And uh, you see them going on Pindapata like through the town, and people are like, what's going on here? But this interdependence on one another is was by design, so that the monks and the nuns had to be in contact with the community every single day. They went into town with their bowls, with their alms bowls, and walked through the town, and people would donate food. And you still see that to this day. And it's this very sacred, ceremonial, really beautiful thing that happens. And so the monastics go into this village with no money, no ownership, no control over what they're being offered. You know, they only take what's offered them. Just presence, just humility, just trust in the Dharma. And again, this kept the practitioners very close to real human life, families, aging, illness, grief, joy, work, hardship. And so the wisdom was grounded in humanity, always stays grounded in humanity. And the lay people aren't just spectators. They're through their generosity, they're directly sustaining awakening. Yeah. So the Dharma circulated and goes through this entire community where no one's practicing alone. Everybody's supporting one another in these communities. And so this generosity is what is the Sanskrit and Pali word is dana. We hear the dana all the time. And this is a pretty sensitive topic, you know, generosity, dana. Um, you know, I can feel a little tender when speaking about this, just from the way I grew up in a very low income environment, a single mother, and so people asking me for money is very very difficult. Any talk around money is difficult. We have a lot of conditioning around it. So us, you know, as Mountain Stream, asking for things, asking for support, it's not an easy thing. Yeah. And receiving support is really difficult too. And this is kind of uh, something that's not talked about a lot. I'm talking about my experience as how I grew up. Even receiving support is there's a little bit of shame tied to it sometimes, and that's my own thing to work through. And so asking and receiving it can bring up all kinds of things, and the receiving requires a degree of humility. And so it's not just uncomfortable in the asking, but it's also uncomfortable in the receiving. It's not something that we're very used to in the West. That this culture of generosity or of interconnection and uh, mutual support. And so there can be kind of almost like a dissonance when that culture is put here in this Western context. And so we try to navigate that the best we can. And with the early Sangha, generosity was at the very center of the practices of the Sangha. So there can be this joy in giving. It kind of loosens this sense of isolation when I can give. There's this letting go that can happen. That's really beautiful. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about, volunteering or giving, offering a skill or just being here to greet or whatever it is. All of this is something that is this taking our place in the community. And then the receiving, it kind of softens the independence, this independence that sometimes we feel. And both of these are forms of practice. And this community, Mountain Stream, it's as all of you know, we exist here out of generosity. Like this whole place is here because of things that were given. People showing up early. People vacuuming the rugs, people setting out mats, people helping with our programs, people volunteering time, offering resources, supporting teachers, supporting staff, supporting the grounds, um, caring for one another behind the scenes. I mean, uh, so much happens here all the time. And it's all out of the generosity of this community. These countless unseen acts of care are what allows this place to exist. And we all want this place to exist. And so we're completely dependent upon generosity. And, we try to be transparent about this because transparency itself is part of what we would call right relationship. Yeah. Sometimes there can be this thing like there's the teacher, there's the staff, there's the this the board, there's all these people that do this thing, and then there's the Sangha. It's not like that. We're all in this together. At least that's how it should be. And so we owe transparency to everyone here. So if there's anything that anybody wants to know about how your generosity to this organization is being stewarded by those who are in control of that generosity, you ask. It's your right to know. It's everyone's right to know because this is your place. This isn't mine. This isn't Lauren's. This isn't the board's. This isn't anybody's. It's our community because we exist out of care, mutual care. No one's above anybody else. This is a non-hierarchical situation we find ourselves in. And we exist here because of one another. And as soon as people don't want this place to be here, we won't be here anymore. So that's why we're here. And so we're all in this together. We are one Sangha, uh, this interdependent, non-hierarchical community. And so everyone has the right to know what's going on here. And what we're sustaining here isn't just an organization, it's a refuge. It's the third jewel. It's the Sangha, a place where, you can encounter your suffering honestly and where we can all discover freedom and awakening together. That's really the whole purpose of this place. It's more than a community center. It's a place where we are here to wake up, yeah, to end suffering in ourselves and in one another. And both of those are mutually dependent as well. And so the dana, the generosity, becomes belonging made visible. It's this acknowledgement of that mutuality. And so this is where this reflection becomes very impersonal to us as a center, we're not simply a meditation center, we're a living, breathing Sangha community. We're the third jewel in action. Like, this is it. We're here. It's a place where we come and sit and do sitting meditation, and we do walking meditation, but also a place for practicing patience. It's really easy to do that here. Practice patience, practice listening, practice forgiveness, practice generosity. A place people walk through that door carrying joy, carrying loss, carrying confusion, carrying clarity, carrying knowledge, and hopefully learn how to meet life with awareness and compassion and care and heart. And so each person contributes to this field. This is a field we're creating. Yeah. And each act of kindness strengthens that field. Each moment we're honest with one another deepens the refuge. It deepens our practice. And every time we're willing to have the courage enough to stay in relationship with that difficulty, it sustains us. Yeah. And so in this way, what began in the time of the Buddha, it continues right here, right now. This is a continuation of what the Buddha started. This same ancient experiment, human beings practicing and waking up together. And I think that's pretty incredible, because we can lose touch of that. Like, this was the Buddha. This is what the Buddha had in mind. So why is Sangha a jewel? I think I've answered that. Because awakening needs community. It needs community. It needs continuity. The awakening of the Buddha didn't survive because of a single teacher or because of a single insight. It survived all these thousands of years and through across cultures and communities and wars and famines and empires and all of these things. It survived because communities practiced together, generation after generation after generation after generation. So the Sangha is the living body of the Dharma. This is the Dharma. This is where it comes. This is how it moves. And every sincere community participates in that transmission, including this one. And I think that's really incredible. Really incredible. So Thich Nhat Hanh said with the future Buddha, Maitreya, is the Sangha, is the Sangha. And it's kind of what the Buddha said when he passed into parinirvana. That's why he didn't have an heir or somebody that yeah, he put in charge of the Sangha. He says, this is the Dharma, this community we created. This is what's going to carry forward. This is the teacher. And that's us. And so just to close up here, to take refuge in the Sangha is to recognize that awakening is relational. It's relational. We create conditions for one another. And if we're doing it right, we support clarity. We support honesty. We respond to suffering. We sustain the path together. We carry forth the legacy of the Dharma and the Buddha's teaching. Yeah, this is the practice of Sangha. This a field of shared awakening. Yeah, and that's why it's a jewel. That's why Sangha is the third jewel. Yeah, so let's just pause here for a moment. We wake up out of the delusion of being separate and realize that we're all in this together. All right. So there's a little time for sharing if anybody has any questions or any insights or anything at all you'd like to bring up.
This is Jen from the hall. We'll start here and then we'll check and see if anybody online wants to participate.
Hi, this is John.
Hey, John.
Thank you, Adam. Really enjoyed your talk tonight. So I get that we're all in a Sangha here, but when I go across the street to SPD, that is a community also. Would you consider that a part of our Sangha or?
It's practicing in community for sure. Yeah. So yeah, this isn't it's really just about relationship, and so this everybody who we come into contact with is part of our community, our human community. And so there can be different ways of talking about Sangha. It can be just about the community of practitioners, or it can just be the community of humanity. And so every time we leave here, we come into contact with, all of these various people. They're all uh, in service of our awakening, and we are to them as well. The difference with a Buddhist community is, we have these things like the Eightfold Path and these various guidelines that kind of help us to contextualize. And so, me mirroring, me being a mirror to somebody else, they might not have the skillful means for it. But me as a practitioner, I have skillful means to work with it, to create, to move towards waking up in a more complete way. So yeah, I would consider it community, Sangha. Yeah.
You described when I sit on my cushion and I'm peaceful, that's pretty easy. And then I come here in this Sangha, it's pretty easy too. But when I go to SPD, that's where I do the learning.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's always a learning. Yeah. For sure.
Let me check. I just want to check and make sure I'm not missing anybody. Oh, Betsy Abrams. And then we'll go to Govinda. Can you unmute? We can't hear you, Betsy.
Oh, here. Okay, now. Thank you, Adam, for your talk. It was quite wonderful. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that the monks' peace walk to DC was for me so joyful to witness every day as they go through the communities, and so many people came out, and I've heard that they with an interview with their leader, the man in the front, the monk in the front, that he was really surprised that how many people responded to them and came out in communities. It's just a wonderfully positive thing to happen.
Mm. Yeah, it's really beautiful. And
Absolutely. That's all I have to say.
yeah, and they also tell the story of, there's a lot of people who didn't like them doing this, and how many people threw things at them or yelled obscenities at them, or um, pulled up beside them and then floored their gas pedal to put a bunch of black smoke in their faces and things like that. And how each time they responded with, "May you be happy, may you be well, may you be safe, may you
Right.
be free." And that's the practice, like
Right.
that non-reactivity. The reactivity shows us where we're clinging to
Mhm.
something. And so, yeah, they're a really incredible example. And just
Yeah.
from walking, being peaceful,
Yep.
through heart, people were breaking down and crying just through their kindness and their integrity. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's really, they changed the world from that.
It did.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that, Betsy.
Sure.
Govinda.
Hey,
Govinda.
thank you
Yeah.
for the talk. I was a bit kind of struck by the structural interdependence. I understand that it is cultural and it's what we grew up with in the East, but if so we have the monks who have renounced their life on this path of Dhamma, and then we have the householders, I guess, who till the soil and work and actually create the food. Are they kind of part of the system? Like, why should they give alms to anyone? And what is making them actually support the idea of people being awake? How do they know that? Like, why does everyone not want to be a monk? So that's what I'm like, this interdependence of like someone doing work while someone else is on a path of enlightenment. How do they actually help each other?
Well, the lay people would also see themselves as on the path to enlightenment, but I know like in Thailand, it's traditional for most people to become monastics at some point in their life, usually when they're very young, and then they sort of just decide at that point whether they want to continue with that lifestyle or not. So it is a choice. Not everybody wants to do it, but yeah, I'm not sure. Particularly in Thailand, I know that the lay life is seen as an integral part to this whole project of waking up. So them giving their food to the monks is an act of practice, as dana is generosity, and then they live through the rest of their lives in a mindful way. And so their devotion, they're as devoted, but the expression of their devotion is different. So they're all within practice. But this is thousands of years old history, and then in some cultures that they just couldn't do that. And so for instance, when the monks went into China, the culture just didn't. It couldn't sustain that lifestyle. So the monks did start to cultivate their own food and start to do things like that. And Tibet the same, and Japan, and these various places that it went. It took hold, in Southeast Asia. It's still happening today. But yeah, so it's happened differently. But they're even in those cultures where the monks do grow their own food and deal with money and all those things, there still is this relationship between the lay community and the monastic community, and they offer service to the lay people, and the lay people offer what they can to them. So there is that interdependence as well. So yeah, it just is different. So and some I don't want to speak all good for it, because in some cultures they would say like, oh, the lay people, it's their working out their karma. Maybe one day they'll be able to have enough good karma to be able to be born and be a monk or whatever. So there's different beliefs out there. So it can get a little distorted. But I think from the Buddha's perspective, at least from my understanding, is that lay life is seen as advantageous as being a full monastic. So, but thank you. Yeah.
Another comment from the hall.
Okay.
Jim, I really liked tonight, and if I don't forget one of them, I would just make two comments. I had heard also that the monastic life is sometimes entered by people later in life. They have a family, they have children, they have life as we think of it, as lay in the Sangha. And then when they're freed up, some people go in at that stage of life. My second comment, I have, I'll call it a background in Christianity. I wouldn't say that I'm Christian or Buddhist or anything in particular, but one of the sayings in the Bible that I find very intriguing is, forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Mm.
And my application of that is to just start with, I'll just call it MAGA. And my thought is, yes, they know what they do in terms of their physical actions and whatnot, but what they don't know they're doing is the extended harm.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is we're all a product of our conditioning and the environment that we grew up in, and it's difficult to judge somebody else's conditioning through our own lens. So yeah, I think that's a good, and it's interesting because Jesus said that when he was on the cross, being killed. Where, yeah. So, thank you for that comment.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
I just connecting the dots between your Lovely talk. Betsy's reminder about the monks in action, which I think a lot of us were paying attention to. And then John's comment about, is SPD Sangha too? I feel like one of the things that the monks were literally embodying the entire time was this amazing idea of, yes, we are all Sangha. And just the clarity and the kind of strength and I can't even think of all the yummy words, but it was riveting to watch them. It was riveting to watch the people who were anywhere near them. And it just really strikes me that it was sort of like the actualization of what what moving in Sangha in action looks like. And I hadn't really put that all together until disparate teachings and comments and stuff, but that helps me a lot. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, let's just pause here for a moment and just in gratitude for this time that we have together. To be in Sangha, and this community that we have here is it's rare. There's not that many of these out there. A place we can come to practice together in community. To encounter the Dharma is very rare. It's a rare thing. To be born as a human being is a very rare thing. And so all of these things, there's so much gratitude and joy. And as a Sangha, we remember those who have passed and those who are going through hardship. May all receive the support and the help that they need. From all the goodness that we have gathered through our time together, we offer it for the benefit of all beings in all directions, without exception. May all beings everywhere be free from suffering and the conditions of suffering. Thank you all so much.